Hello, this is Peter Falk, and you're listening to the Columbo Files on the Ludic Lounge, hosted by Antonicus Maximus and John Soares. Good evening, good listeners, and welcome to another file in the Columbo Files. I am your host, John Soares, and with me, as always, you may recognize this man as Joe the Policeman in the What's Going Down episode of That's My Mama. Please give a warm welcome to the man, the myth, the booty, the legend, Antonicus Gluteus Maximus IV.
Sexual chocolate.
To the people, Anthony.
Sexual chocolate to the people. I'll have to edit that first point out, but good calls here. I appreciate that. Appreciate that call.
How you been, buddy?
Oh, election and stuff. So,
Yeah, it'll all be over soon.
But John, you could say that these times that we're in and amongst is a jungle. A greenhouse jungle, if you will.
By that, you mean the title of our episode? Is everything like this a greenhouse jungle?
Yes. Very excellent transition.
We have a pretty solid episode this week, I do say so. And I think this is our first returning guest star, if I'm not mistaken, which I might be.
Yeah, perhaps.
I think so. We'll correct it. If I'm wrong, we'll connect it. We'll correct it next week. But Anthony, I think that's time to get into our cast, and I think we can mention very briefly, because I don't know how much you want to get into him since we've talked to him before. We've talked.
John, with Ray Milland is who you're aforementioned there. Playing his character tonight is Jarvis Goodland. Since we already previously talked about and broke down Ray Milland's acting career in an earlier Columbo Files episode, I only just want to list the highlights, John.
Yes, and you can, if you want a more full-fledged breakdown of Ray Milland's career, go back to season 1 episode, Death Lends a Hand.
Yes, thank you, John, because I totally forgot the episode title. But one thing I did not forget was that Ray Milland starred in The Lost Weekend in 1945 as Don Murnham and Dial M for Murder, which is where I recognized him from, as Tony Windus in the year 1954, John.
That is correct, and a personal favorite of mine. Another Billy Wilder comedy opposite Ginger Rogers, The Major and the Minor, where he is quite good in that, even though the premise is creepy as hell.
Yes, and we talked about that in our previous episode.
Yep. Call back. I do the call back. Time to go to the next person, Anthony.
That would be Bob Dishy. Interesting last name. as Sergeant Wilson. Now, John, Mr. Dishy himself started his acting career all the way back in 1967 with lots of acting credits to his name.
Yeah, he's best known for the reprisal of this character, Sergeant Wilson, in 2 different episodes of Columbo. But Anthony, funny enough, he doesn't keep the same name every time. The only thing is Sergeant Wilson, but his first name changes both times. Here it is Frederick Wilson. In the episode that he shows up, he is Sergeant John J. Wilson.
Interesting, John. I
don't know why they did that.
I think it must have been maybe different director or different writer or something, or they just didn't think anyone would remember. They didn't bank on, John, in 2020, 2 schmucks doing a remembrance of their beloved TV show.
Well, they may be schmucks, but they're 2 good-looking schmucks, if I do say so myself.
And there is our Peter Falk.
Patron saint of the podcast.
But, John, going back to Mr. Dishy himself, Mr. Sergeant Wilson, he starred in episodes of Mary Tyler Moore Show, All in the Family. He starred in the movie, I believe it's a film, I Wonder Who's Killing Her Now, as Jordan Oliver in the year 1975.
Mm-hmm.
He also starred as Dr. Kurtz in the 1976 feature The Big Bus. He starred in Mrs. Columbo as Sergeant Wilson as well, John.
Oh, my God. We're never going to escape Mrs. Columbo.
Yes. It might be a stretch goal if enough people talk to us about it.
Yep.
Now, John, did you know he also starred in episodes of Barney Miller, The Twilight Zone, the 80s version, that is, The Golden Girls, episodes of Matlock. John, he was in the 90s film Jungle to Jungle. Do you remember that film?
Yeah, the Tim Allen Disney picture where a man learns he has a 13-year-old who grew up in the jungle, and then he takes that kid from the jungle, he brings into a concrete jungle, meaning New York City, and wackiness ensues.
Yes, exactly. He played George Langston in that. John, Bob Dishy was also in Frasier, Law and Order, Along Came Polly as Irving Pfeffer, if you remember him in that 2004 film, I believe it was.
Very vaguely, but yes, I do.
And he was also in Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Blue Bloods, Mozart in the Jungle, and finally finishing his acting career, at least on IMDb, in 2014.
Now, Anthony, one fun fact, well, actually two fun facts. The episode of All in the Family he did turns out to be somewhat, according to IMDb, is somewhat of a crossover with the sitcom Maude, starring future Golden Girl B. Arthur.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, All in the Family and Maude are connected to each other.
Yeah, I think Maude is a spinoff. Yeah, Maude's a spinoff of it.
Maude is, I think, Edith's cousin. I don't remember. She's related to somebody in All in the Family. I know that much. But, Anthony, did you know that Bob Dishy was born in Brooklyn? The son of two Jewish immigrants, one from Lebanon, another from Israel?
Oh, but John, did you know that a part of his heritage in Law and Order Special Victims Unit, he played, and I believe it was an episode or two, he played a specific rabbi in those episodes.
Oh. And speaking of Jews in New York, he was a childhood friend of Peter Falk, Anthony.
Really?
According to IMDb, he was a childhood friend of Peter Falk, and I imagine that's how he ended up getting these two parts in Columbo. He discovered acting through high school drama, like you and I did, and then that went sideways for various reasons. Origin stories, that'll be another stretch goal. He was the drama major at Syracuse University.
Well, I'll be.
That's all I got from Mr. Dishy. Anthony, who do you got next on the docket?
I have Bradford Dillman as Tony Goodland.
Tony Goodland is our victim this week, and Bradford Dillman, Anthony, entered the United States Marine Corps as an officer candidate in 1951.
Oh, well, good for him.
Yeah, he joined as a second lieutenant and was set to fight during the Korean War, but did not end up going into deployment. He ended up as a communication teacher for the majority of his military career stateside. He was discharged 2 years later in 1953 as a first lieutenant, and then decided to study acting with the Actors Studio, which is famous for popularizing the method acting practice. It was famously led by Lee Strasberg, who, among others, taught Julie Newmar, future Catwoman, how to act, and also was punked by last week's star John Cassavetes.
Yes, I was just about to make that connection. And John, speaking of other things, he had a lot of work, John.
Yes, he did. You want to tell us about him?
Yes, this man worked. And when I said this man worked is I have like almost a paragraph of credits, so I'm going to just batter my way through them.
Yeah, I'll pick up whatever you miss.
John, he starred in the 1955 classic Modern Romance as Cliff.
Okay.
He starred in episodes of Climax, Wagon Train, The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, Dr. Kildare from 64 to 66 as Andrew Webb, as well as Tony Warren.
Okay.
He also starred in The Plainsmen, 1966 as Lieutenant Stiles, Court Martial, the TV show from 65 to 66 as Captain David Young, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Ironside, episodes of The Virginian. He also was in the movie John Escape from the Planet of the Apes as Dr. Lewis Dixon in 1971.
Dr. Dixon, hello. I'm here to sabotage momentum at Charlton Heston.
Chuck Heston, everybody. Chuck Heston.
Thank you.
And speaking of thank you and Chuck Heston, this has no natural transition, but he was also in episodes of the FBI, Bonanza, Mission Impossible, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. John, did you know he was also in episodes of not only the Wonder Woman TV show with Linda Carter, but also The Streets of San Francisco?
He was also in episodes of Barnaby Jones, The Incredible Hulk, Fantasy Island, Charlie's Angels, not as one of the angels, the Falcon Crest, The Love Boat, Dynasty, which I think is an old favorite of my dad's, and of course the perennial classic, friend of the show, Murder, She Wrote.
Now, John, going back to his his midway point career in the streets of San Francisco, did he have a flower in his hair?
No, once again, as always, Anthony, it was Michael Douglas.
Fair enough.
And Carl Malden.
Yes, can't forget Carl Malden.
I got a few more things, though, about Mr. Dillman, Anthony. He was in some movies. He was in the famous B movie Piranha, about piranhas eating people. That was famously remade. That was later remade as Piranha 3D during our youth. He was also in 2 Dirty Harry movies, Anthony.
Yes, he was. He was in The Enforcer.
And Sudden Impact.
As Captain McKay.
Yeah. 2 different characters, same time, just like Bob Dishy.
Yeah.
It's like nobody cares about continuity, I guess.
Apparently not. But then again, those were kind of the lesser Dirty Harry films, in my personal opinion.
I disagree.
So, funny story, John.
Yes, Anthony.
This is going to be a slight tangent, so loyal listeners at home, I do apologize. So, I watched the Dirty Harry movies some time ago on a 4-pack I bought, which I think there were like 5 Dirty Harry movies total.
Something like that, yeah.
John, interesting enough, in every opening of those 4 movies, one of Clint Eastwood's partners of Dirty Harry just happens to die in like the first 15 minutes of each film, which always leaves Clint Eastwood to go. And again, forgive me if I'm wrong, because it's been about 5 years since I watched this 4-pack. Clint Eastwood essentially always going, "This is why I don't have a partner." So I don't understand that, but I always found it interesting.
So every time he says, "This is why I don't have a partner."
No, I mean, in so many words that I'm not exactly quoting them.
No, I get what you were putting down. It's kind of crazy though.
Yeah,
that only needed 1 movie though, just to be real.
Although Liam Neeson, not Leslie Nielsen, Liam Neeson starred in one of the movies.
Really?
Yeah, the last one. Yeah, I think he was the bad guy in the last film, if I remember correctly.
Oh, he was probably some Irish terrorist, huh?
Probably so.
Yeah. I would pay good money to see the Leslie Nielsen version of that, though.
Absolutely, John. Now, John, Sandra Smith as Kathy Goodland tonight, the wife of Tony Goodland, who is our murder victim tonight. She starred all the way back in 1952, John. What I have for her is not a lot, but some things I would have known of her.
Yeah, from my research as well, her acting career isn't as robust as other cast members we've seen this week.
But John, I do have a fun fact about Miss Sandra Smith.
What's that, Anthony?
I will get to it after I read off some of her earlier work, though. Our Private World in 1965 as Sandy Larson. She has starred in episodes of Virginian, friend of the show, and father of the show, favorite show, Mannix.
Also co-created by Levinson and Link.
Yes.
We can never escape it.
She also starred in The Wild Wild West. And John, she starred in Star Trek the original series in 1969 as Janice Lester. And here's my fun fact, John.
Yes,
Did
Anthony.
You know that Sandra Smith was the only other person outside of William Shatner to play James T. Kirk until the mid-2000s as Chris Pine.
Anthony, I'm William Shatner, and I can't believe it. I can't believe that somebody else was Captain Kirk. Spock, can you believe it? We're going to get so many comments on that.
So many. So much hate mail.
I apologize in advance.
I found that extremely interesting, so I wanted to
agree.
add that. But she also starred in episodes of Bonanza, The Flying Nun.
Wait, what?
The Flying Nun.
Oh, boy. I hope does she fight the Red Baron?
I don't know, John, but I remember it being, I think it was parodied in a Monty Python episode or 2 about the Flying Nun. But essentially it is, if I remember correctly, and I am going to make sure I remember this correctly, I think it starred, yes, oh my gosh, it did, John. Boy, you best be sitting in your seat, because guess who was the star of this one, which I so remembered, is Sally Field as Sister Gertrude. Yep.
Good old Sally Field.
Yes, and it's about the misadventures of a nun who can fly and her convent and neighbors. That is not a good description on IMDb, but starred a very early Sally Field. That's why I remember this film.
I'm reading the character description. She's a novice nun who only weighs 90 pounds.
Yes.
She can fly wearing her cornet and when the wind is right.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, wow.
And I brought this up, John, even outside of the fact because I just now remember that Sally Field's in it. But another co-star of this Columbo episode also starred in an episode or two of The Flying Nun. And that will be my teaser.
Okay.
And John, going back to Sandra Smith, of course, outside of Flying Nun, she was in The Interns in 70-71 as Dr. Lydia Thorpe, Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, Ironside, and The Rockford Files in 1975.
Anthony,
Yes.
I think it's time to move on to our next cast member. And if I have William Smith playing Ken Nichols, I got a lot of bit on him because he's still working.
Yes, this man does not rest.
He doesn't take a break. He started as a child actor at the age of 8, but according to IMDb, a lot of that was uncredited work. Of that time, some of the more notable movies he was in as a child was The Ghost of Frankenstein, The Song of Bernadette, and Meet Me in St. Louis. He served in the United States Air Force, and he was, like, all caps, a man.
Yeah.
He won the 200-pound arm wrestling championship of the world multiple times and also won the U.S. Air Force weightlifting championship. He's a lifelong bodybuilder. And he has the record. He holds the record. I don't know how current this is, but he holds the record for reverse curling his own body weight.
Jesus.
During the Korean War, he was a Russian intercept interrogator and flew secret ferret missions over Russian airspace.
Man, this man is a man.
No, it gets better. He had both CIA and NSA clearance and was going to enter into a classified position with the U.S. government. But while working on his doctorate, he ended up in contract with MGM.
Wow.
He was the Marlboro Man in the last televised Marlboro commercial.
Yes, so he was.
For the younger people in the crowd, I don't think, Anthony, I think this was past our time, but you and I knew enough about it to be aware of it. Marlboro cigarettes would advertise on TV, and they had this cowboy called the Marlboro Man. I believe it was on the cigarette cartons as well. And essentially, they used the Marlboro Man to tell people how good cigarettes are.
Yes,
and it's cool and manly, and and it's manly because the Marlboro Man says so. But that's just a bald-faced lie. But because we know cigarettes are evil. He was almost in Enter the Dragon, Anthony.
I can believe it, man. This dude was built.
Yeah, apparently Bruce Lee personally offered William Smith the role that John Saxon ultimately had.
Oh,
I forget Saxon's character's name. It's slipping my memory right now. But he was also in the running for Kung Fu, the TV show that was stolen from Bruce Lee. But he was too physically imposing, and they also tried to put something on his eyes to make him look Asian.
Of course.
And this is, again, William Smith, a white man. But Hollywood at a certain area, and even this era, are still really dumb when it comes to casting appropriate people.
But John.
Yes, Anthony.
I'd like to get in some more of his acting credentials. Because we completely skipped over the Ed Wynn Show in 1958. Oh my goodness,
don't you know?
Oh, Ed Wynn Show. We have dueling Ed Wynns.
Oh my goodness. This is so exciting, Anthony. We get to do Ed Wynn. Are you Ed Wynn or am I Ed Wynn?
I don't know. Are you Edwin or am I?
Or are you Scooby-Doo? I don't know. We're going to get so many emails.
Yeah, people are not going to like that. John, though, he was also in The Asphalt Jungle in 1961 as Danny Keller. He was in Perry Mason, episodes of Wagon Train, 01 from 62 to 65 as Jimmy Delaney, which just fits this guy. If his name really wasn't William Smith, Jimmy Delaney, just boom, perfect name.
I mean, the jaw alone makes sense for that.
Oh, and good transition, John, because speaking of Jaws, he starred in Batman, the 68 Batman as Adonis.
Well, that's right, citizens. He starred in the final episode of my show, TV's Batman, starring Adam West. He played Adonis, Opposite Jean-Jacques Gabor as the villain, Minerva.
God, I forgot
Robin.
Zsa Gabor. I forgot Zsa Gabor was in that.
I forgot Jean-Jacques Gabor was in Batman too.
Oh my God. Jeez Louise. John, moving on from that, if we can. He was in episodes I Dream of Jeannie, The Virginian, Mission Impossible, Ironside, The Streets of San Francisco, where he put a flower in his hair.
As did Michael Douglas.
Excellent. He was on the Rockford Files, John. Rich Man, Poor Man, which he's well known for as Falconarity in 1976.
He was also in episodes of The $6 Million Man, Anthony, which makes perfect sense because he is built. Going fast in slow motion. Going to talk about Planet of the Apes, the TV show.
Yes, he was. But John, where I actually recognized him from outside of this Columbo episode was he was in many episodes of Hawaii Five-0 as Detective James Kimo. Oh God, Karu. We'll go with that.
Yeah, he was in the final, I believe, added in the final season of Hawaii Five-0. And Hawaii Five-0 ran for a good period of time. I think like 12 years or something.
Yeah, long time. But John, did you know he was also in BJ and the Bear as John Cooley?
Get out of town. Are you in town? Because get out of town.
Yeah, I will get out of town. Goodbye, loyal listeners.
This is the end of the podcast.
Just kidding, because he was also in Fantasy Island, Dukes of Hazzard, Chips, Knight Rider, Emerald Point, NAS as Colonel Willie Shell in 1983.
He was also in your favorite surprise show, Airwolf.
But John, you skipped over his appearance in Red Dawn. Wolverines!
Yes, he was in a couple movies too. He shared a role in Piranha. He was in Piranha with Bradford Dillman. He was in a lot of exploitation movies as well. One of them, like Black Samson for one. He also had parts in The Outsiders, which is that star-studded adaptation of the S.E. Hinton novel, and another S.E. Hinton novel adaptation, Rumblefish. But Anthony, I think where I recognize him most is his role as father to the titular character in Conan the Barbarian. He taught me the riddle of steel. My father's sword.
But John, what are the best things in life?
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women.
I love that you have that memorized. Arnold Schwarzenegger, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm of a certain generation where Conan was something that was very formative for me. So I have a soft spot for both the stories and the movie.
And speaking of episodes of popular culture that formulated with us, where I'm going to move on to Arlene Martell as Gloria, John.
By all means, take it away, Anthony.
She worked all the way back in 1958. She worked in episodes of Twilight Zone, Gunslinger, Route 66, The Untouchables, The Outer Limits, the OG version that is, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I Dream of Jeannie, Perry Mason, and John, the real reason, outside of The Flying Nun, and that was my teaser, that she starred in. She starred in an episode of Star Trek, the original series, as...
Wait, in which episode?
The one where Spock is starting to go through his Vulcan puberty, and...
Whoa. She was in a mock time?
She was in that particular episode as T'Prig, the bride-to-be of Spock, but she chooses Kirk, so they have to fight to the death in that iconic fight. Shirt rip.
I will say this, though. I appreciate Peter Falk not using his stunt double, and I kind of resent William Shatner for using a stunt double too much.
Yeah, especially in this episode, you'd think Peter Falk would want a stunt double, but that's something we will talk about when we start to dive into it. But John,
I agree. I just wanted to get a quick dig at William Shatner because it's fun.
But John, before we move on to our first act of the night, I have to tell you that it was directed by Boris Sagal, written by Jonathan Lattimore, and scored by Oliver Nelson.
Now, Anthony, I have some stuff about all three of these gentlemen. I imagine you do as well. Boris Segal was a Ukrainian Jewish immigrant to the States. Was nominated for 4 Primetime Emmys for his direction of the miniseries Rich Man, Poor Man, and posthumously the miniseries Masada. Unfortunately, he was killed in a very tragic accident during the filming of his miniseries World War III. I don't know how detailed I can get to it. It was a helicopter accident. Turns like he exited the wrong way into a helicopter and walked into something he shouldn't have.
Oh,
and I will leave it at that.
Jesus.
But he directed a number of notable TV and film stuff. TV wise, he filmed episodes with last week's guest star John Cassavetes, episodes of Johnny Staccato, Anthony's new favorite show.
My new favorite show.
Episodes of The Twilight Zone, the original one, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. episode of Mrs. Columbo. Again, we can never escape her.
Nope.
A TV adaptation of Dial M for Murder. A TV movie of The Diary of Anne Frank, and a whole mess of TV movies, none of which really caught my eye. But one of his film adaptations, Anthony, is interesting because it's an adaptation of one of my favorite novels, Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. It is the adaptation, The Omega Man, starring friend of the show, Charlton Heston. Hello. I'm back to talk to you about how I fought monsters in an abandoned Los Angeles.
And lost my shit. There goes the E.
How dare you say such things on this podcast? And I will say, I'm going to use this opportunity to pitch I Am Legend, the book. Everybody go read it. It's better than any attempt to adapt it than has ever been. Omega Man and the Will Smith movie, honestly, they're two different things. The book is truly one of the best things I've ever read.
Seconding that motion. And John,
Anthony,
we can't forget that Boris Segal is uncle to Steven Seagal.
Was he?
No, I just made that up.
I was like, wait a minute. I did some research. I didn't see that.
Sorry, continue.
Jonathan Latimer is our writer this week.
Latimer, I hardly know her.
Jesus Christ.
No, but I understand your confusion. Please continue, John.
Oh, I don't like you right now.
I know.
Richard Latimer is a novelist and journalist.
Jonathan Latimer, not Richard.
Oh, Jesus. I'm getting my Latimers mixed up.
John, you just got dick on the mind. What can we say?
Oh, we're just getting out all the Loungecast energy right now.
I was gonna say, did we just transport itself into a Carson episode?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I promise no more interruptions on my account.
You better keep all this in because this is gold.
I think I will.
Richard Latimer was a writer and a journalist. He was a journalist at the Chicago Herald-Examiner and later the Chicago Tribune, writing about crime, and met Al Capone and Bugs Moran. He was writing around the time they were active in their respective crime fields. I don't know if that's the way to describe it. He started writing fiction in the mid-30s, Anthony, and he wrote a series of novels starring Private Eye, William Crane, and introduced a blend of hard-boiled crime action with elements of screwball comedy.
Oh,
yeah. So he also ended up adapting a lot of novels to screenplays. One of which, the only one I really recognized was The Glass Key, which is an adaptation of a Dashiell Hammett novel, and Dashiell Hammett is best known for The Thin Man and The Maltese Falcon. But where Latimer got most of his writing chops was 32 episodes of Perry Mason.
Oh.
So, and Columbo was his last credited writing credit outside of his fiction work for the page. Score this week, Anthony. We have a very exciting composer this week, Oliver Nelson.
And John, I will say, and I'm going to touch upon this like 17 times throughout this episode, I really like tonight's score.
I really did too. It really stood out, and I'm disappointed he only did this one episode because honestly, I think he probably should have done more.
Honestly, at the end of this episode, at some point, I said to myself, "Why can't Oliver Nelson just score my life?" driving down the road, just walking.
Yeah, because that's usually when the music shows up. He was a jazz saxophonist,
God, that
clarinetist.
makes so much sense. Sorry.
Yep. He was a jazz saxophonist, a clarinetist, an arranger, a composer, and a band leader. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps in 1952, and I'm guessing served in the Marine Corps band because he played woodwinds in the 3rd Marine Division Band in Japan and Korea. Now, Anthony, from 1960 to 61, he briefly played with jazz legends Count Basie and Duke Ellington.
Whoa, what?
And then he joined Quincy Jones's big band, playing tenor sax.
God, this dude's a legend.
It's the legend. His big music breakthrough came with his album, The Blues and the Abstract Truth, which was recorded for the label Impulse and featured musicians such as Eric Dolphy, Roy Haynes, and Freddie Hubbard, all, I'm guessing, famous jazz people. I have no idea. But that album made his name as a composer and an arranger. From this, he ended up working as an arranger on large ensemble jazz albums for Thelonious Monk, Cannonball Adderley, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Johnny Hodges, Buddy Rich, and the list goes on and on. Unfortunately, his work for TV and film was reportedly destroyed in the 2008 Universal Studio fire. So a lot of his, whatever was left of his work is unfortunately gone and only exists in the context of the episodes. He is uncredited as the music arranger for the film Alfie.
Whoa, Jude Law.
No. Not that Alfie.
No.
The original Alfie.
Oh, okay.
He was the conductor and music arranger for the Marlon Brando film Last Tango in Paris. He did music for The Bionic Woman and the theme song for The $6 Million Man.
Whoa.
And was the composer on Ironside.
Damn.
He had a hell of a life.
Holy shit, John. And I know the E already went out the door. That is excellent. What a huge bucket of win.
Huge bucket of win, and we will salute you repeatedly during this episode, Oliver Nelson. Now, with that wonderful segue that I gave myself, yay me, Anthony, I think it's time to get into our act breakdown, starting with Act 1.
So, John, Act 1 opens with a phone ringing and a woman picking up the ringing telephone.
Yes, with great ominous music going on.
Yes, it was. And great alarm clock on the side of the bed.
Yes, indeed.
So, John, the lady in question picks up the phone, answers the phone to a voice that's Ray Milland's. You can tell it's Ray Milland's, even though he's trying to, quote unquote, hide his voice, asking if that's Mrs. Tony Goodland.
Can we talk about how he is literally doing like the worst possible impression of a thug from a 1940s movie? It's like, if you want to seize him again, you better comes down here to the Five and Dime with a bucket full of cash.
Oh my gosh. 2 buckets full of cash. One for me and one for my toupee friend.
Yeah, his toupee is not good.
It's bad. Oh, it's bad.
It's like a sleeping squirrel on top of his head.
It's bad.
It's bad. So Mrs. Goodland gets this call, is very confused, in part due to the fact that she just was woken up. And again, we have an issue where 2 spouses are not sleeping in the same bed as each other. To go back to our first episode where, repeated listeners have told us, standards and practices kept married couples separate to not imply any philandering was going on. And she's checking this bedroom because she's concerned that her husband is playing some kind of trick. He's not there. And she then decides to call a young blonde woman named Mrs. West.
Yes.
that we learn. A former receptionist to Mrs. Goodland's husband, and she implies that maybe typing was not all she was doing.
Nope.
With
Not
the
at
great
all.
line, "I know all about your skills at the office."
That was an excellent line by Kathy
was-
Goodland then. But
Yeah.
John, after that phone call, she hangs up the phone and calls Jarvis. And boy, Ray Milland is Jarvis, and that character is an asshole.
Yeah, he is. Milland is playing Jarvis Goodland as a gigantic smartass. That's the only way I could describe him without being a little bit more blue. But he and Catherine Goodland aren't on the best of terms. He is very demeaning towards her. But we learn that, she tells him her concern about the possible kidnapping. And we learn that there is no kidnapping. It is apparently a scheme that Tony Goodland and his uncle have concocted for some reason.
John.
Yes, Anthony.
We do learn that, but one thing about that phone call I wanted to mention is, alongside of Jarvis being a jerk, he talks about how Kathy's been fooling around, essentially.
Yes.
And he also talks about how, and then Kathy replies like, "Oh, well, Tony's not a saint himself. He's been fooling around." Then Jarvis says, "Fooled around in self-defense," which I thought was an interesting phrase. And I also thought it sounded a lot like, and I couldn't help but start to sing, "Fooled around in self-defense."
Oh, my God.
I will file that. I will take that back.
Please do. I would like you to take that back.
I will take that back. And John, as you previously mentioned, Jarvis and Tony are running a scheme.
Yeah,
And
we don't know.
We don't exactly get all the fine details, but we know Jarvis is the brains of the outfit.
Very much so. And he is very much demeaning and telling Tony, what to do and treating him like a giant child. He also pulls out a gun, which it was a great fake out in this moment, because he just holds it straight up to Tony like he's intending to use it, but he's just pulling it out so he can have it later. But I just wanted to point out that I found it to be a very effective,
Yes.
almost murder, but no, not happening.
That was a great moment, but an even better moment, John, was the scene right after that when they hop into their separate cars and drive somewhere. But John, this is where my first instance, well, technically now second instance of telling you how great this score done by Oliver Nelson is. The music literally reminded me of like a song you would see in like Goldfinger or some other Bond film of the 60s.
Yeah, where it's a substantial driving scene, and it made me think of of another scene, also in the episode that Ray Milland is in Death Lends a Hand. There's a driving scene with Robert Culp, and there's like jazzy music to it, and it just doesn't fit there. I remember us talking about it, and like anything, you could just go back and listen to it because there's so many episodes of the Columbo Files just waiting for you. But here, it just fits. It's just there. And I think the context of these two being schemers, and we still don't know exactly what else is going to happen, I think helps lean into the kind of the playfulness of the score.
Yes, 100%. So Ray Milland, Jarvis, if you will, starts. By the way, did you figure out how clever it was that Jarvis is the uncle and Jarvis, Tony, Iron Man? I thought that was really cool. I put the two together. Yeah.
I doubt Lattimore was a big fan of Iron Man back then, but
fair enough.
Did you notice that Tony is driving a Jaguar and Jarvis is driving a Rolls Royce, which coincidentally are the same vehicles from last week with
yes. I did
John Cassavetes and Blythe Danner's characters.
Yeah. So Jarvis, they pull off to the side of a road where it's insinuated that they're going to push this car off, the Jaguar, if you will, push the car off of a cliff. And $300,000, Tony puts up a defense as like, hey, this cost me a lot of money, to which Jarvis says, oh, well, did it cost you $300,000? Indicating that that's how much they're looking to score off of this scam. And John.
Yes, Anthony.
I know you're thinking, hey, Anthony, the thing you like to do every time money is mentioned in these early 70s episodes of Columbo, you like to convert that into today dollars.
How much would $300,000 be? What are they asking for in today's currency?
Approximately $1.9 million, John.
Holy crap.
Inflation. And so they put a hole in the Jaguar to indicate that this car was shot at and Tony would be kidnapped from there, and they push the car off the side of the ledge there.
Yeah, and even a little bit before this, there's all kinds of instructions of what Tony's supposed to do, who he's supposed to call, and at what time. And I think one thing we can talk about here is how much fun Ray Milland is having being a dick.
I think he's having too much fun. Like, boy,
yeah.
Like, where does the script end and Ray Milland start in this episode, John?
Yeah, it's like Jarvis Goodland is a very controlling prick, and he is very condescending to his nephew. He is very much, you have to do this. And it's just like, turn off the engine, raise up your window, put it in neutral. You idiot. Why are you doing that? It's that kind of stuff. And it's like, I'm with you though. I think it was just like, I think he enjoyed it a little too much, and it was it verged on distracting for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that, John. But again, he's playing this know-it-all character. So again, maybe it's just really good acting because Ray Milland is an exceptional actor.
Yes, indeed. Now the scene transitions to, we're doing this. They did their car stunt, shoving the Jaguar down the hill during the night. The day comes, and the police have come on the scene. And another thing to note back in Tony and Jarvis's scheming during the night, he had Jarvis had Tony keep his ear out on the police radio to hear the missing persons report. Please look out for this yellow Jaguar. And the police have found this yellow Jaguar, and Columbo pulls up. And there's a new guy who is very, very polite and also a little direct. And boy, is he just giving all kinds of information.
Yes, he is, John. He's very unctuous, and you could tell, like, right off the bat that he's a rookie up-and-comer trying to make a name for himself.
Yeah, he's very flattering at Columbo. He's pointing out, there are skid marks of one vehicle and another vehicle, and he points out where the car fell. So they go down this hill, and I think we could talk about probably the most overt comedy moment we've gotten in a minute. Peter Falk's pratfall down the hill.
Yeah, I want to know, because it felt to me like this was like a big old oopsie, and by the time they got to the bottom, they're like, well, we'll just leave it in.
I don't know. I would imagine Peter Falk had to do a couple tumbles. But he took that fall well, and it is Peter Falk doing that fall.
Yes, it is. And John, the line, as soon as God, I'm already laughing at it. So the line, as soon as Sergeant Wilson meets him at the bottom there, he goes, it's a little steep.
What I'm amazed is how he held onto the cigar that whole time down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's my thought, because it's just like, that's like halfway to starting a fire. As far as I'm concerned.
Pretty much. And speaking of lighting some smoke, this is where Sergeant Wilson starts to light some smoke up Columbo's you-know-what, telling him how that Captain Ritchie said that Columbo's a legend, John. And I really like this scene, this interaction at this particular point.
Yeah, the new guy, we don't know his name quite yet. He's very much respectful of Columbo, and is just like, it's an honor to work with you. You're fast becoming a legend, and he's just, all the while Columbo is just like, yeah, really, is that the case? While he's looking around this car.
No, but his beaming smile he gives Wilson, he's like, legend. Oh, Captain Ritchie said that. Oh, why would he say that? He really said, no, he didn't say that. And I appreciated that.
Yeah, but it's also still a very Columbo thing where he's just like, well, why? Why are they doing that? Why? Tell me why. I need to know why.
And John, did you catch the stab at Richie that he takes towards Wilson? I don't know if it was towards Wilson. It could have been towards Wilson or towards somebody else. But he goes, yeah, Captain Richie is a fine administrator.
I did catch that. And it's like, oh, okay. He doesn't think he's like he's a proper investigator, huh?
Oh yeah, that was epic. I was like, ooh, that's as close to a slam as we're gonna get.
Yeah. So we learn this new officer's name. It is Sergeant Wilson. I'm just going to call him that because the name changes between the two appearances of this character. Apparently, he was assigned by the police captain to work with Columbo. And, all the while he's having this conversation, Columbo's just examining the car. And Wilson's giving all of this information about who found it, what time, which honestly, for the context of Columbo, doesn't really matter. For the show, the show and the person.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But Columbo asks for a pocket knife and gets into the car and pulls out a bullet from the car seat. Yep. Which, I had this thought while I was watching. It's just like, based on the place of the bullet, there should be blood, huh? You would have been, but we'll get to that later. Also, I was a little unnerved that they weren't wearing gloves.
Yeah, that whole little thing about DNA.
Yeah, or fingerprints, Now, and Columbo, I noticed something. I want to see if you noticed something too. Columbo keeps Wilson around this car to look for more physical evidence. And, during that conversation with Wilson, Columbo theorizes, oh, you're here to expose me to new policing techniques, huh? And we learned this about Wilson. He likes doing high-fangled technology stuff, which is helpful. And also, he's kind of very focused on efficiency. He likes to give all the information. He writes everything down. But Columbo makes a comment at the end of the scene when he leaves the canyon. He says, I prefer to take the long way out. And it got me thinking about something that Wilson said at the beginning of the scene. The way, where the Jaguar fell into the canyon was the quickest way down.
Oh, you see, I didn't catch that at all, John.
Well, I thought it was an interesting little commentary about how efficiency is key. And Columbo essentially refuting it, saying, yeah, sure, it's the fastest way, but you end up falling down on your ass and maybe hurting yourself and maybe doing something stupid like starting a fire with a lit cigar in a dry field. Whereas if you go the long way, you still get to where you're going.
And it's more definitely efficient, and you don't start a wildfire. That's really good, John. Good job, John. I'm proud of you. That was actually really good.
I mean, I do this for a living sometimes.
Fair enough. Oh, my goodness gracious. And then, John, the scene changes to Columbo showing up to Kathy's house and to find Kathy and Jarvis there.
Yeah, and they're in the midst of a conversation where they have learned about the ransom. They have received a letter that Tony wrote at Jarvis's behest. It has his fingerprints on it. It was part of their plan. This whole letter is just set to get the whole process into motion. I will say that Ray Milland is quite the ass here.
Yeah, that's a definite theme throughout this episode.
Yeah, and Catherine Goodland is dressed like the 70s.
Yeah, that she is.
Yeah, a lot of jumpsuits and a lot of droopy cleavage. And, they're very apprehensive when Columbo shows up. To talk about Jarvis in relation to the Goodlands, meaning his, nephew and niece-in-law, and Columbo, he's critical of everybody.
Yeah.
And Columbo just comes in and tells them, well, we found the car. It looks like foul play, and they're not surprised.
Yeah. And then he reacts to that and says, if my wife found out from a police officer that I'm missing and my car is at the bottom of the canyon, I'd like to think she'd show a little bit more emotion than you guys are showing.
Yeah, because all you guys are doing is just looking at me with blank faces. I felt the awkwardness of that scene was just, for me.
And it only gets worse, John, because
I know.
after Jarvis confesses to Columbo that they got the ransom, that they knew this information already, and it's Columbo remarked that it's lucky that they can break the trust to get this ransom money.
So for a little bit more context, apparently Tony Goodland's father set up a trust account that is essentially holding all of his assets away from his son. So his son will get a monthly, check, an allowance from the interest earned on this trust. And that's all he can get. He'd have to get a job, but he's not going to get all of this until whatever the criteria of the trust is met. But the trust has a clause written into it where they can pull out more money in the case of an emergency. So now the plan comes into full view here. Tony and his uncle are staging an emergency so that they can get a substantial amount of money out of Tony's family trust.
Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself. And then Jarvis leaves to go to the bank to make sure to get the paperwork filed.
Yes, because the letter that they received said that Jarvis is to deliver it. And as a Goodland, Jarvis is the one who is the co-administrator along with the bank. And the letter also says, don't involve the police. And that's in part why Catherine and Jarvis are cold-ass jerks to Columbo. And they are very adamant about Columbo's involvement being as minimal as possible, almost next to none. But Jarvis is the one who says, let's tell him things. Let's give him a general lay of the land.
Right. Which Columbo's picking up on. He's like, okay, I see where you're at, guy.
It's like, yeah, he knows something's amiss, but he just doesn't know exactly what yet.
And speaking of things that go amiss, and speaking of awkward, Jarvis leaves, and then Ken Nichols appears out of nowhere and starts hugging on Kathy. And boy, the look Columbo gets and how awkward he is in this scene is just so telling, John.
I mean, that is what happens when you see the riddle of steel enacted in motion right in front of you.
Yeah, pretty much, boy.
The riddle.
Yeah. And so obviously Kathy sees Columbo reacting, and she starts immediately going off like, look, yeah, we leave separate lives, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want my husband to be safe. Good day, sir. And tells him off, shuts the door in his face. And I think Columbo kind of respected that a little bit. He's like, okay, you had the guts to tell me you're leading this double life, and you're throwing it right in my face.
Yeah, and that's something that we can bring up again in a subsequent conversation towards the end of the episode, because I think you're right. He does acknowledge that it's a ballsy move and it's worth respect. But I also have some other thoughts about her line of thinking that I'm not 100% sure she's in the right per se. But that's, again, stuff for later. The next scene, Anthony, is Jarvis back at his house, and he is a repeated set in this house of Jarvis Goodland is this greenhouse, a solarium, or whatever he calls it. I'm just going to call it greenhouse because it's easier to kind of understand. I imagine there's a difference between greenhouse and solarium based off of whether it's attached or not or whatever. But we have another instance where Columbo's a delightful gremlin, Anthony.
Boy, is he ever, John.
Yeah, so Jarvis Goodland goes into his greenhouse, and he hears something, and lo and behold, there's Columbo just hanging around. Apparently, he talked to a groundskeeper and said, he'll likely be in the greenhouse. You'll meet him there. So Columbo just let himself in and wait. And Jarvis has a very substantial garden collection. For example, he has a $1,200 orchid, Anthony.
Yes, he does. And boy, John, $1,200.
Please tell me you did some math on that.
John, adjusting for inflation, $1,200 was approximately equal to close to $8,000.
$8,000 for an orchid. That's insane. And Columbo notes that. It's just like, it's an expensive hobby. $1,200 for an orchid, $8,000 for an orchid. And, Columbo does his usual meandering, and Jarvis cuts straight through to it. Columbo is there because he wants to know how Jarvis made out at the bank in regard to the trust and to see the letter so that the police can do their own fingerprinting. The letter describes exactly what happened to Tony. The fingerprints and handwriting match. And Columbo also mentions that, something, he's got a couple things bother him. Apparently, he had Jarvis followed. And the officers who followed him noted that, he stopped at a nursery on the way back from the bank, which, doesn't make sense.
Oh, yeah. And Jarvis just gets angry.
He is very uppity in this scene. And he even threatens to call Columbo's superiors, which Columbo really does a great job kind of diverting the rage. It's just like, he says, no, yeah, you're right. I'm overstepping here. And my superiors have already told me, stay back until you know that Tony Goodland is safe. And then you guys can then send your men in to be a little bit more on the nose. But until then, stay back. And that calms Jarvis down. Which then leads to something I'm a little surprised he does. Jarvis tells Columbo exactly what he feels about Tony and Catherine Goodland.
I think he did that to say, like, look, I hate him so much, and yet I'm still trying to save his life, Columbo. So you're going to find it out eventually. I'll tell you on the forefront that I hate him. I hate his wife, but they're the only living relatives I have. So, of course, I'm going to do what I can to save his life.
And speaking of doing what he can, we'll see what he does do in Act 2.
John.
Yes, Anthony.
We're in Act 2, which means we get to see Sergeant Wilson meeting up with Columbo at the residence.
Yes, that's right. And they are counting all of these wonderful bricks of money. So much money. I don't even know if $300,000 looks like it's that much, but it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of green bricks, John.
Yeah, and Columbo and the police officers are outside. They're not inside. And Columbo's just eating a sandwich. And it looks like they tapped the phones. Which
yes.
I hope Columbo got a warrant for. But
I think that's just going into the whole like minor things in the background, because I'm assuming they'd be okay with getting their phones tapped because there's a kidnapping. So it's one of those little details. I wish like Columbo threw a line to Wilson saying like, hey, good job getting the warrant for the phone tap or something like that, just to make it a little bit,
And speaking of things that are a little bit suspect, apparently some of the other officers asked Wilson to ask Columbo, why is a homicide detective sticking around on what appears to be just a simple kidnapping?
Oh, you see, I thought it was Kathy and Jarvis asking Wilson why he's still on the case. I didn't know the other officers.
Yeah, Wilson like offhandedly mentions that he was just talking to the other officers and they just were wondering why Columbo's still there.
Crazy.
Yeah, interesting. So, as instructed, Tony calls the house and give that man an award. He did a great job passing off the fact that he had been tortured or something.
Yeah. He did a better job disguising his voice than Ray Milland did at the opening.
Right. So he gives instructions to his wife that Jarvis is to go to a specific gas station and then he will receive more instructions there. And Ken Nichols offers to go with Jarvis. It's like, I can help. I can ambush a guy.
Oh my God.
Wants to be a man of action.
I was like, geez, Louise, sir. Like, take a step back. And that's essentially what Jarvis tells him. Jarvis tells him, look, I don't need any heroes.
I'm just going to do the thing and we're going to call it good. We don't need it to make it any more complicated, which I get. I understand that. So Columbo, Wilson, and two other officers are tailing Jarvis the whole time. And this is time number 3 where we're going to mention the score, but damn it, it needs to be mentioned.
Oh, it's great.
Great score here.
Great score.
Absolutely fantastic.
Just an upbeat jazz, like a just upbeat
on the hunt jazz score. It's just like, we're on, it's cops on the case investigating, something suspicious. it's great tension because Jarvis clearly knows he's being tailed.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Exactly.
Now, he hits the gas station and he has gets the next round of instructions. I imagine they're doing it just so that they can keep up appearances, because I don't know if they have that, if the police have that phone tapped.
No, I don't think they do. But again, I think what I appreciate is that Jarvis is still, you don't hear words precisely because we're here listening to the conversation, seeing the conversation from the interaction of Tony. So you hear Tony go like, "Hey, it's about time. I've been waiting," and then he pauses and then goes back into his act. So I took it as Jarvis saying, "Hey, we don't know if this is tapped or not. Just go about like you're actually still beaten up and everything."
Yeah, or I thought he was like trying to simulate that he was one of the kidnappers.
Possibly. I mean, it's a very quick interaction, so it could have
Yeah.
been either. To be fair.
So Jarvis ends up going into like the foothills of Los Angeles or wherever, and Wilson and Columbo and the other officers stop, and Wilson pulls out like this telephoto night camera.
Oh my gosh, it's the best, and they have such a great interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, because apparently Wilson put down his own money for what he calls the best equipment, and Columbo just deadpans, "You must be a bachelor."
Yeah, and so one of the things, John, that I was laughing about, not just about this interaction, how like perfect comedically timing Peter Falk was in it, but Wilson starts taking these pictures from his sniper camera, and then all of us like the picture. I'm like, guys, this is Tony. Like, does anyone have a current photo of Tony? Because this is Tony.
Yeah, I mean, like Tony comes up to the roles that Jarvis is in, and he's just in a pantyhose mask, which just smushes your face. It's not gonna. I turn into the late Sean Connery there for a minute. It smushes my face in many ways than one. Yes, that's right. But no, I'm with you. It's like this disguise does not work as well as either Tony or Jarvis thinks it does.
Not at all.
But this whole interaction with Tony pulling the money out of the rolls is photographed. Jarvis takes off, and on the other side of the hill, Tony sneaks back into the trunk of the rolls. And the police are just investigating the hillside, looking for clues. They find footprints, which from something we skipped over a little bit in Act 1, Tony's wearing fake boots to put the police off on the trail, or should I say off on a different trail.
Yes.
Which
exactly.
Wilson buys hook, line, and sinker every single time.
Yep. And that's why Columbo's like, okay, take your 3D fancy pants pictures there. But dude, we got to get rolling.
Yeah, it's literally just like he could not care less about that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And they pull over Jarvis after the fact, and Columbo starts grilling him a little bit. It's like, did you recognize the kidnapper? Could you describe anything about him? And he's like, no, it was a taxing. Jarvis, says it's a taxing situation. I was panicked. He had a mask on. I couldn't remember it. Leave me alone. Now, we come to a cabin, and Tony finally gets out of the rolls, and his hair is gross in this scene because it is just 70s big.
Yeah.
It's like me if I stuck my finger in an electrical socket, to be quite honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And we learn the real reason that Tony went to all of this trouble to get all of this money.
Yeah.
It is ultimately one last attempt to try and keep Catherine, his wife, in his life.
Yes. And at this point, just the way Jarvis is just spewing hate for Tony, essentially going like, is she really worth $150,000? Look what she's doing to you. She's a cheater. She's not faithful, not loyal, and you're just going to throw away $150,000 on her, which we learn again, it's half of around $2 million. So you're going to waste $1 million to $20 on her
for a woman who is clearly more interested in another man and is only with you for your money, not for you. It's just, it's really sad, to be quite honest. As annoying of a person Tony is, ultimately he was just trying not to be alone, but just couldn't really figure out how to actually communicate with his wife his issues.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest issue is that Tony nowhere near looks like William Smith, John.
Yeah, that's about it. And then we learn what phase 3 of the plan is.
It's time for phase 3 of the plan.
And bang, 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 down goes Tony.
Yeah. It like Ray Milland, I appreciate him delivering the line. It was a little over the top, but I'm like, you know what? With the music in the background, I can dig it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it worked out a little bit better. It's a solid murder scene. Now, the next day, we see Jarvis back in his greenhouse solarium. And the gremlin is back. Columbo is back. And reports, there's nothing on Tony quite yet. And Columbo starts, spouting out theories to Jarvis saying, they could have just called, used him for instructions, and then killed him after they got the money. But he prefers to stay positive. So, hey, what do you know?
Yeah, exactly. And everything Columbo's throwing at Jarvis in this scene, Jarvis is just defending every minor detail. And Columbo's just batting it and going, I wonder why they called you Jarvis and not his actual, wife, or had his wife deliver it. And then Jarvis reflects, John. How does Jarvis reflect to Columbo bringing up that point?
That, if I don't exactly recall. It was more like it was, that they couldn't trust Catherine with the money, right? That
yeah, exactly. Because she would drive straight off to Vegas with it.
And then Columbo asks, well, how would they know that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I gotta say that this, and this is why I was a little slow on the response when you asked me that question. I honestly think this is one of the good interrogation scenes that Columbo has shown us so far. It is very much Columbo confirming his suspicions here, and that is something that we try to do every time in the Columbo Files, sometimes to easier effect than others. But here it's all of those little things. It's just
exactly
like, for example, the phone call. It's like, why did they call Catherine first? Why not just do the ransom call, and tell him, okay, we have him. You're going to go here as soon as possible, and then call and do that. Why set up this call with Catherine first? And Jarvis says, well, she's stubborn. She wouldn't have believed it if it just came cold. To which Columbo asks, well, how would the kidnappers know that?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also skid marks. Not those kind of skid marks.
Yes.
I know you're thinking it. But this is something that Wilson noted. There are 2 sets of skid marks, one from the Jaguar and another from a heavier car. And Columbo's wondering, well, the Jag is a fast car. That's a sports car. How would and this other car shot at a Jaguar? How did it keep up?
Yeah, and how did it not pierce any, limb or anything on Tony? Because there's no blood.
To which Jarvis says, Tony's always been good at dodging things.
That was kind of a funny line. I did get a chuckle out of that. I was like, okay.
It was a good delivery by Ray Milland. Also, a good bit of delivery is Columbo just ruffling through papers, just looking for that report.
Yep.
Because it's like, and I just love that one of them is like, oh, got this telephone bill, got to take care of that. And the reason Columbo's doing all this, and this is relevant for something later on, apparently almost a year prior, Jarvis shot at a suspected burglar right outside of his greenhouse, and he supposedly shot at the floor, didn't damage any of the glass panels. Columbo just wanted to keep track of, I think, whether or not Jarvis actually had a gun at some point, which he says, it's unregistered. Yeah, but I have one. I haven't used it in a year. I don't even know where it is. That's what he tells him.
Yeah, exactly. And
Columbo also... Oh, no, my apologies.
I was saying Columbo kind of like, well, that's fine. If I had to put everybody in the clink for having an unfiled license, everybody would be in jail and I'd have paperwork for days. And then, John, they walk into this beautiful pool hall room, just this billiards room. Holy crap, man.
And this is where I think I fell in love with this scene, because Columbo is literally theorizing every single bit of Jarvis and Tony's plan while making perfect shots.
At least we're perceived that they're perfect. I'd really like to see if he actually was perfect. But yeah, and like he's just off the cuff, like nailing Jarvis for every little point on everything. And then like as he's shooting pool, he's like, oh yeah, I forgot how good I am in this game. Oh, must be on the wrist. Like, and he's saying all this in between just daggers at Jarvis.
Yeah, he's just like every time he gets one, it's like one of the times he got one of Jarvis's little points, and Jarvis tries to deflect. He's just like, I can't miss a shot, can I? Yeah. And it's just like, oh, it's such a good exchange. Such a good exchange. And then something happens that you always point at, Anthony. It's your favorite thing.
My favorite thing.
What happens, Anthony?
Columbo gets a call on Jarvis's phone in Jarvis's house. And it's like, dude, like I get that on cell phones, but how rude is it to get a phone call at somebody else's house?
Yeah, it's like, I told them I'd be here. I hope you don't mind. So the call is to let us know that Tony Goodland has been discovered, and we get another info dump by Sergeant Wilson at this cabin. Ultimately, none of the information there really matters to Columbo.
Except for the fact that it's like, oh, it must be 3 or 4 different men because 3 or 4 brands of cigarettes, all of these tracks. He's like, yeah, this is... And then Sergeant Wilson's like, luckily they left all of these clues, or luckily they left all of this evidence. And Columbo's like, yeah, too much evidence.
Yeah, and he even, I think Columbo notes that later on. It's just like, there's just so much evidence here, and it's just falling into our lap. It's like, isn't that odd? Isn't that odd? So, like I said earlier, Wilson falls for the stuff that's literally right in front of him just because it's the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
But, hey, maybe there's more to it. Speaking of more to it, there's more to Columbo's investigation, where he meets with Mrs. West, the former secretary of Tony Goodland, who everybody is assuming they were stooping.
Yes, everybody was assuming that Tony and Toprig were smoking for sure, but they weren't, John. He would show up to her house and just sit there, sometimes drunk, sometimes sober, and just talk and talk and talk. And he would just pour out his soul to Miss West. And she is shooken up because, in her words, I've never sat in a room with a man and just talked. They always want something. Yeah,
it's just like, I think she just appreciated the fact that this man didn't want anything from her besides her friendship.
Yeah. Allegedly.
I mean, we're only ever given one side, and it's her side, but I'm inclined to believe that she is telling the truth, and that it's just, this man who is so in love with his wife, but is so abused by his wife, that he is just trying to find some way to get companionship again, and also stick it back to his wife and say, hey, this is hurting me.
Yeah.
I hope it's hurting you too, but he keeps getting nothing from her.
Yeah. And this is where she spills the beans and tells Columbo that Tony and the lover of, who she didn't name because Gloria did not know, the lover of Tony's wife, Mrs. Goodland, he gave the guy an ultimatum. Essentially, if Ken paid $50,000, or if Tony paid Ken, the lover, $50,000, Ken would stop seeing his wife.
Yeah, at this point, we suppose it's Ken. We're not given 100% confirmation quite yet, but that is something that Columbo finds interesting. And he asks Mrs. West, or Miss West, would Tony be the type of man who would fake his own kidnapping to get this kind of money? Yeah. And if that's the case, whoever helped him do it likely killed him.
Yep.
So you have to tell me whether he is or isn't. And she sticks to her guns and doesn't.
Nope. She essentially says, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So Columbo eventually sees where that conversation's going, and he just leaves. Says, thank you for your time, leaves. And then instantaneously, like the door does not even close fully, she gets out an address book and calls somebody, and that somebody turns out to be Jarvis. She ends up calling John.
Yeah, and we don't exactly know why she's calling him, because the scene changes immediately to Columbo having tracked down Catherine Goodland, who apparently has been difficult to find. And to be quite frank, the conversation was a little frustrating to me because she is making a lot of assumptions about how Columbo is thinking about what Catherine Goodland is doing with Ken Nichols.
Yeah.
She is assuming that he is judging her.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, dude, if the shoe fits, first of all. Second of all, Columbo's just trying to make sure he solves the murder of your husband that you married.
Yeah, so it's just like, I don't get her I get her combativeness. I figure it's probably somebody who is used to being judged for having the relationship that she has with her husband. But it's like, I don't think Columbo, outside of that initial shock, would give her any reason to think that he was thinking otherwise,
Yeah, exactly. And then this is where, so Columbo ever so subtly drops that the information he got from Gloria about how, the information that he got from Miss West was that, Tony was gonna pay your lover or presumed lover $50,000, and the presumed lover would then go away. As Nick is watching, not
Ken.
Ken Nichols. That's where I got Nick. As Ken is watching on this yacht, on this boat, in this dock, and is going like, "Oh, I got some splaining to do."
Yeah, and it's after that. It's immediately before that they're like, Columbo is just establishing, okay, you were gone at the time of your husband's murder because you were out with your boy toy. Sure, fine. I appreciate that you are not a hypocrite and you are telling me straight as it is. But do you feel like he was being petty by saying, "Oh yeah, your boy toy, he was going to dump you for $50,000"?
I don't know if it's petty. It could be petty. It could also just be, Columbo going like, "Hey, I got this information. I'm going to spread it to you, just so you know this guy isn't all he's cut out to be."
Yeah, so maybe you deserve better. Maybe that's what Columbo's doing.
That's kind of how I took it.
I think that's the positive way to take it. Maybe I was thinking about it more harshly. But speaking of harsh, Anthony, I think it's time to get into the harshness that is Act 3.
So, John, Act 3. We find Gloria sneaking into the greenhouse of Jarvis.
That's right. And her Corvette Barbie outfit, if I do say so myself.
Pretty close to it.
Yeah, so she finds her way into the greenhouse, and she gets spooked by an alarm clock. It is dark in there. And then we see Jarvis hiding in the dark. And Miss West says, yeah, it's definitely spooky. And I agree. Get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I'm 100% like, why are you there? So she starts telling him everything that Columbo told her about the suspicion that somebody close to Tony faked the kidnapping with him and killed him. And Jarvis is assuming Gloria is going to blackmail him. He's assuming that she's going to be like, look, if you give me a cut, I won't say nothing to Columbo, etc. So we have this great tense scene, and the music is heightening it up. And we see Jarvis reaching for the same gun into a drawer until Gloria tells Jarvis that he suspects it's the wife. It's Kathy who's setting everything up. And then he puts the gun back in there and goes, okay, I know how to just shoo this person out of here.
Yeah, so, I mean, she believes that Catherine is Tony's accomplice and that Catherine and her boyfriend killed Tony to get the trust money, and then they left with the money. And I will say about this setup for Jarvis to almost murder Miss West, it's great and subtle, to be honest. It just 100%. Like it comes out of nowhere. You you suddenly see the gloves, you suddenly see the gun, and it's just like, oh, that's what he's been going for this whole time. He thinks he's in danger, so he's going to kill her, and then it turns into a situation where he is more concerned about setting up more protection for himself.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, he has the clever plan of, because they have matching 32 pistols, Jarvis and Kathy, he's going to go over to Kathy's home there where, Tony had the pistol and Kathy had the pistol there. And he's going to swap the pistols, and he's going to make it seem like ballistics are going to find this. They're going to see that Kathy held the gun, literally the smoking gun with the smoking bullet, and that's going to lock her away, and then I'm in the clear.
Yeah, and I got to say, I really liked this scene in particular because of those handheld shots where it was a little bit more realistic style filming. It almost made me think of some of the Spielberg stuff from Murder by the Book, where it's like it feels a little bit more realistic. It's not as fixed as it tends to be in some of the Columbo episodes. I don't know. That's just my thought.
No, I agree. I really liked it. The suspenseful music, again, the almost got him moments of where he thinks she's going to wake up because she is dead asleep in the bed, and he's swapping these guns, and he's afraid she's going to wake up and catch him in the act, and this whole plot's over. But it's not John. She successfully sleeps the night away. He swaps the gun, gets on out of there, and then calls, not Columbo, John, but calls Sergeant Wilson to come on down to the greenhouse.
And he gives Wilson supposedly the gun that he hasn't seen in a year, which is in reality Catherine's gun, and is saying, I have all this information. So on top of the gun, because he's giving Wilson the gun to exonerate himself. It's like, here's the gun. It hasn't been fired. It's not gonna match whatever your ballistics have. So I'm out of the clear. Plus, I have all this information for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just so happened to give you all of the dirt on how Gloria came to me, Miss West came to me, explain this plot. It makes feasible sense, so let's go check and let's go ransack the home of Catherine Goodwin.
Yeah. So before the warrant is given, Wilson goes to find Columbo at a chili bar.
Yeah, of course. It's not Bert's chili bar, but it's a chili bar.
It's a chili bar. I want to go to both. I want to go to Bert's and this chili bar, just because I just want that experience to be quite fair.
Yeah.
Wilson is convinced that the case has been cracked, considering all of the information that Jarvis has given, and Columbo says, "Okay, go for it. Do what you got to do."
Pats him on the back and says, "Yep, take the initiative, young man. Go ahead and go forth and venture on." And Wilson grabs that opportunity by the horns, rushes over there, and they start tussling and turning the home of Kathy. And eventually they find them, not only the murder weapon, John, but they find supposedly the bag that the ransom money was in.
So now it becomes increasingly more suspicious that Catherine has both this ransom bag, so supposedly the money is in there, and they have to confirm that the gun matches the ballistics, which leads to an interesting little exchange between Wilson and another police officer there.
Grover is his name.
I believe so.
Yeah, I was like, that's an interesting Sesame Street name. And Grover's like, wait, we should check in with Columbo. He's senior on this case. And Wilson's like, no, I'm in charge. Run down this gun, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I see what you're doing there, young man.
Yeah, and it was a little brazen as far as my opinion goes, because we opened with this guy being incredibly respectful towards Columbo and his process, but then all of a sudden Columbo has given him an inch and he is just charging like he's running down San Juan Hill with Theodore Roosevelt or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not only that, John. You mentioned him starting off respectful, which he does, and then slowly but surely, especially in the scene where Jarvis calls him over, he sits there and goes, well, Columbo has interesting methods that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm like, oh, okay, so you don't like the cut of his jib, so that's why you're going to take charge, and you're in charge of this quote unquote murder scene, or this scene and the murder weapon and all of that.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why they didn't. I mean, I think in modern TV, you would probably be using somebody like Wilson a little bit more to kind of frustrate your protagonist. So maybe if they did a more modern Columbo, Wilson wouldn't just be popping up and just, start off as someone respectful and then turn into somebody who's a little bit more disrespectful as he gets more opportunities and more chances to show, hey, my method is just as effective.
Yeah, exactly.
When in reality, if we look at the thesis of this episode, the long about way might be long, but the result is still the same.
The result's better, even.
Absolutely. And I think we can get into how we get that result, Anthony, at our final scene at Jarvis Goodland's home, where he has returned from the scene of the supposed crime at Tony's house. Jarvis enters his pool room, pours himself a drink, and hears a noise in his greenhouse. It sounds like a pot has shattered. And lo and behold, the gremlin himself has returned. Columbo is just sitting there waiting.
Yep.
Just waiting.
And essentially, he's waiting. He's sitting there. He's apologizing for the mess that he'll get cleaned up. He was waiting for Jarvis to come home. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we see Sergeant Wilson come in with Kathy Goodland. And Columbo's still waiting. He's waiting for his man to give back results. And Grover comes into the scene, John. And Grover tells him that the slugs that were found, that Columbo gave him that were found, were that of the same murder weapon.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And Jarvis instantly knows, when he hears that, instantly knows, like, damn, okay, what just happened to me? And Columbo goes, yeah, so how did your gun, because this is the bullets that you said when you were firing at that prowler a year ago, how did your gun with those bullets happen to make her way over to Kathy's house and be in her little dresser drawer there?
Yeah, and that's when you mentioned the third bullet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I love that moment where Jarvis realized, he has that moment where he's going to fight it, and then he realizes, oh, wait, there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
There's no way out of this. It's like the only place that gun would have been was here, and that means I did it.
Yeah, exactly. So he tells, he gives Sergeant Wilson some credit because Columbo used a metal detector to find the third bullet in the pile of dirt there. So he's like, hey, thank you for introducing me to these newfangled detective models here, but can you actually take the real murderer and lock him up in the clink for me?
Yeah, because, the obvious stuff that you fell for that was just, very much there, and not looking at the deeper thing because you were more concerned about efficiency. Be a better investigator, look closer.
Yeah, and to be fair, he's a rookie cop, right? So of course he's going to chase after the easy stick there because he's a rookie cop. He doesn't have Columbo's experience. So
I give him some credit. He, the details are nice, and he is efficiency is good, but it's just like he just jumps so much to just the finish line without doing the due diligence to actually get from point A to point B.
Exactly, John. And speaking of points from point A to point B, are you ready for your final thoughts, John?
I think so, Anthony. Let's get to it.
I'm so sorry to bother you. Just one more thing.
John, my final thoughts, sir, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's only about 2 points myself. The first thought, music, the score. By God, it's excellent. It might be my favorite score out of season 2, maybe, but out of Columbo, it's definitely probably top 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the music this week was incredibly strong and very appropriate to the content of the episode. I think that's been the chief issue that we've had with the music so far, is that sometimes it just feels a little too inconsistent.
Yeah.
and a little just bit too haphazard compared to what's actually going on in the episode. So big props to Oliver Nelson there, because honestly, I wish he had come back more, but he was busy doing other shows in the 70s.
Yeah, he's busy helping his son, Ricky Nelson.
No, you are way off base.
Yes, I know. But my second and final point, John, was that while this was a great episode and it was fun, it seemed a little long for me. I think they could have cut this maybe by 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I think it would have just been a little tighter. Maybe 15 minutes is asking too much, but it just felt a little, towards the end, I was like, okay, this is kind of just feeling a little long.
I see what you mean. I mean, I was surprised at the episode itself, at least according to how I watched it on Peacock. It said it was about like an hour 13, and some seconds, but it's a little bit shorter than what we're used to. But I think it's a little bit meandering at times. Mostly with Milland. I feel like Milland is just, and this is one of my points, I feel like I like Milland. I liked him a lot better in Death Lends a Hand. He was a lot more subtle.
Agreed.
A lot more controlled. I think there is a version of this where he can play Jarvis as still being a petty jerk, but I think tone it down, because I think he was just too aggressive with how much smarm and know-it-allness Jarvis had here.
Essentially, it was a little too vaudevillian. It kind of felt. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I just prefer the subtlety more. I think, and the other thing I just want to highlight is Peter Falk himself. I think, honestly, at this point, he is wrapped up in Columbo like a warm blanket.
Yeah,
it is. He knows how to work within the confines of Columbo, the character. And the scene with Jarvis in where he's just picking apart the plan and picking apart, hey, this seems funny, and just setting up everything and knocking it down. It was just so smooth and cool and intelligent. It honestly, it ended up being one of my favorite interrogation scenes.
Yeah.
Exactly. At least so far.
No, I 100% agree, because that scene you mentioned, John, and then not even missing a skip, playing pool, shooting pool, and then still interrogating and making his shots right into it. And all around, John, I 100% agree that this was probably Peter Falk's one of his finer moments, for sure.
Absolutely, Anthony. Do you have any other things you just like to one more us with?
John, the only thing I want to hear one more thing of is how you, in this episode, as only you can.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another file in the Columbo Files, brought to you by the Ludic Lounge. Please feel free to join us on the Ludic Lounge cast. Wherever podcasts are obtained, we get into much more looser shenanigans, but we bring you the same kind of quality as we do here every week.
That's debatable.
I got to do marketing. Let me do marketing.
Oh, fair enough. Sorry.
I have been one of your hosts, John Soares, and on behalf of my podcast brother, Antonicus Gluteus Maximus IV, you can find him on TV shows, wherever you may find them. I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Peter Falk, and you've been listening to an episode of the Columbo Files, hosted by the Ludic Lounge. And just one more thing. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Ludic Lounge, Anthony at RojoLoco44, and John at just_John_0891. Or feel free to email us at theludiclounge@gmail.com.